see here. See if I can go back into my email.
Hey everyone, welcome to the new media show. I want to welcome you this morning to our show, and it's Rob and I solo at this point. Our scheduled guest either slept in or forgot. Kind of hard, isn't it? Sometimes on Saturday morning, isn't it, Rob?
Yeah, it is. I think people get into routines on Saturdays where they sleep in. I know I did that for many years too, and then I started doing this show, and that ended abruptly.
So I must be the only guy on the planet that doesn't sleep in on Saturday. I never have. Really, if I sleep, if it used to like 7 a.m., that would be like, whew, that'd be big. But
to kind of tie into new media, I used to get up early in the morning to do my, my radio show on Saturday mornings. I did that for years and years and years. So I had to, make sure all my scripts were pulled together and all my guests were ready to go because I was doing a live radio show on Saturday morning. So I've always kind of done things in the new media space on Saturdays. So it's really been a habit. It's really, in actuality, it's really been Sundays when it's been kind of like you can actually take a breath and relax a little bit because I wasn't pushing on these buttons on Sundays ever. Really, I've never done anything on Sundays. I don't think there's too much activity on Sundays. I don't think typically.
No. But anyway, we digress. But we're just before we pulled the trigger here to start. I said, well, I guess we got to find some stuff to talk about. But we get a lot of feedback on Facebook and on Twitter and a variety of places on the show. I saw a lot of commentary on our guest last week in some of the podcasting forums. People were talking about it. So Danny had a pretty good impact on people, as I suspected he would. So that was really.
I just think a lot of people weren't really aware of Danny too much in the community. He's been there for as long as I can remember. He's just been, plodding along, doing his thing, and I thought it was great that he got some recognition because he's as much a pioneer in this business as anybody, I think.
Yeah, so I agree, and I think it was a discussion I was also having in another area. We were kind of talking about, who are people that should be like recognized in the space that were, really instrumental in the early days, and Rob Walsh over at Libsyn came up with a list, and some of the other folks were too, and we were just kind of talking about it. And if you think, I know the Podcast Movement folks are doing their Hall of Fame announcements. I don't know how many they've got left, but I know that they have announced Adam Curry and Leo Laporte. But if I think about going back, Dave Weiner. If he had, he's probably as responsible of anyone coming up with the RSS 2.0 spec, the RSS spec in itself, and a lot of people don't realize that. And then the 2.0 spec that we live by today, between him and Adam on the daily source code and coming up with, essentially this whole mechanism, the space would have definitely evolved a lot different. But you look at, the team that was originally started, Libsyn. I don't think any of those guys are over there any longer, having left through the multiple acquisitions.
Yeah, both of the Daves, Dave Mansciuto is now doing BossJock, the software. He was one of the three founders of Libsyn, and so he's still very much involved in the space.
Yeah, and just from a different angle. And then you've got folks like T. Morris and Dave Slusher and Evo Terra. A lot of people don't even know who those folks are. And I think that those are all folks that were instrumental in the early days of the space and really helping things kick off. Doug Kay, another guy. Uh, so it's interesting, as names change. Um, I don't. It's interesting to see who's being the influencers these days. And what's even more curious to me is who was an influencer maybe 2 years ago are on the wane. It's like they have these peaks and valleys. So.
Oh yeah, that's true. I mean, another guy is Michael Gohagen is another one,
Right.
And Chris Smith, who's been recently working with Podcast One, is another guy that's been, in his Pale Grove Studios back in New York. I mean, he was involved in the space very early on. Has been an influencer that, a lot of people haven't heard about either. So, you're exactly right, Todd. There's been a lot of people that have kind of come and gone in this space, but a lot of these people are still out there and they're still doing something related to this in some capacity and still having an impact. That's what's really, really amazing about this community is that there's a lot of people that started up in this getting involved in this that are still having a significant impact on the growth and development of the space. And there's a lot of new people that are coming in that are bringing new companies and new energies and it's amazing to me. And Todd, you and I were just talking about this, that there's so many new companies and so many new people getting into the space now. I just hear on a daily basis, hear about new startups or new apps or new companies that are getting into, podcast audio monetization strategies. And I think we are clearly in a hyper kind of growth phase somewhat in reality. And I'm not sure, if there's a danger here that we get into a bubble and it pops or something. You kind of wonder sometimes when you get something that's overly excited, right, in the space, and a lot of people jump in with new products. And is there room for everybody? Is the question that comes up. And I don't know what you think about all those thoughts, but.
Well, there's also they have expectations. I had a call. It's kind of interesting. My phone rings and I answer, and it's a guy that's kind of asking me some questions. I introduced himself, told him what he was doing, and he's getting ready to launch a business. And I was like, these are probably questions that you're going to kind of have to figure out on your own. I'm not. You want to hire me as a consultant? I said that's fine, but I'm not just going to sit on the phone for an hour and do a data dump. So, but it was interesting in the few minutes that we chit chatted that he had questions that in the back of my mind was, you really don't understand the space. You're asking questions that are readily available to be answered online. Just a couple of Google searches, and you probably could get some history that might save you some money. So I think we have a lot of people that are jumping in thinking they know what the space is, but don't. That really don't know, the mechanics of it, and more importantly, the personality, not necessarily the personalities, but the heartbeat. Yeah.
I met with a guy here in Seattle that works for a big venture capital firm here in Seattle too, and he had some interest in getting involved in the on-demand audio space, and so you get. I'm not seeing a lot of interest from really directly from the big VCs in this space, but I'm seeing some interest in people that are in that community maybe that want to do a seed startup or something like that, a seed funded startup, and not. And try and build something themselves. I think that's the other trend line. I mean, I get contacted on a regular basis. I got contacted by not that this is exactly in that thread, but by a trade show that's going on back in Florida here in October that wants to get involved with this show. And so I'm seeing these other events out there too that are starting to cover new media and kind of talent online and creating content for the web and things like that this podcasting thing is starting to get pulled into those conversations and those events, which is a good thing, because I think it's going to spread the word. It's just not and I think that all of us need to get involved in other types of conferences, and events that can spread the word about podcasting to other communities that aren't. I think we go to, let's say, the New Media Expo, or we go to Podcast Movement, and we talk to ourselves, right? Instead of going out and, and talking to people that aren't necessarily involved in podcasting or part of the podcasting community, and sharing our knowledge with them to maybe get them involved in the community somehow. So I think that's a little bit of an evangelist role that I think many of us in the podcasting space fill here. I'm always trying to help new people, new talent out there that wants to create a podcast, and give them advice and things like that as best as I can. Like you, Todd, we don't oftentimes have a lot of time for that, but it's certainly something that as leaders in this space, we kind of have a little bit of an obligation to do, and I think we've always done it. I know I always have.
I think if you look at events like streaming media, it's usually west or east, depending on what year they flip flop.
Mm-hmm.
There are, like you said, a lot of events, but you also, you think about the expense in going to many of those events, and that in itself can be a little bit daunting because of the, you're just out a week. You typically just figure if you're going to go to a trade show and it's a couple of days, it's. In my instance, I have to leave the day before, and usually have to leave the day after.
Well, you're a lot further from doing something in Florida or something like that. This particular event wants to do something with the New Media Show, so I have yet to talk to you about it. But
well, that's fine. But I think there comes a time too where you have to really weigh the event, who's going to be there.
Sure.
The value you're going to bring, and oftentimes these events want something for free too. They want you to come, and it's that is a that's a trade-off that you have to think about. Whether or not it's going to be worth your time to go to the event and put your money forth, and if you're going to cover it or whatever you may do.
Yeah. No, I agree. It can be expensive doing those types of events, and it's sometimes being involved in it from a content creator's perspective can kind of cut down on those costs, which as we both know, if you can go there and be a speaker or something like that, or be involved in the content creation side, you typically don't have to pay for a ticket.
But at the same time too, if they're someone's asking you to come cover event and get exposure, there are real in my case, I know what it costs to do that post-production work. And this is a good topic for content creators that are thinking about going to the event. Danny talked about last week going to where your audience is, doing and going, doing events and going to events. And, it's, when you start doing the math, airfare, hotel fees, food, time, and then on the back side of it, time. Lots of time to do the production work. If you went there and done 50 interviews, you probably have 50 hours worth of work to do at least. I always talk about the video stuff. They going to like CES or NMS or NAB. It's easy to go to the event and do the work and do the interviews, but when you get back home, the editing and then the research you have to do to write a substantial article to go along with the content, that takes time.
Mm-hmm.
And so, a lot of folks just throw stuff up, but I'm a firm believer, and I've got a pretty good formula on how to making the SEO work from a execution standpoint. And if I'm going to go to an event and cover something and I come back, I want to maximize the content views. I don't want to just go there and have 25 people listen to it. That's not the end goal.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. Speaking of that, the podcast movement stuff too is there seems to be a big kind of roll up to that event. I mean, it's going to be interesting to see if they get a couple thousand people there, or what's going to happen at that event, more specifically to the podcasting space.
Yeah, they're going to have their biggest announcement ever. It's either tomorrow or Monday. I don't know who, or they're obviously announcing a speaker. It sounds like. So we'll see who they announce. I will mention here on the show that if you haven't bought your tickets to Podcast Movement, if you do so, if you use the let me make sure I get the code right. I believe it's New Media Show NM. Okay, where's it at? Duh. All right, let me look it up here. Wasn't prepared. NMS. So if you use the promo code NMS, you're going to save a little bit on your ticket. And so yeah, use the promo code NMS at Podcast Movement.
And that'll get a discount or something?
I think so. I think it gives some 10% purchaser discount.
Okay.
So it's probably a good time at this time to get if you're going to go, to get your tickets locked in, because the ticket prices go up on, let's see here, let me look at the date. Register now. Let me look at the pricing. Yeah, the price goes up $100 soon. So it's $397 right now to register. All access, early bird, whatever that means. We're gonna get save. Okay, you'll get access to everything that is at Podcast Movement. Includes an entry to every keynote and breakout session, entry to Friday night's award show, red carpet party, and after party, entry and Saturday night party at Fort Worth Stockyards, on-demand access to video and audio recordings of every session, a whole lot more. So that's not necessarily an expensive ticket at this point either.
No, that's true. Hey Todd, have you looked at a relatively new company called Zap Media?
Zap Media, no.
They're involved in the IAB podcast ad, or standards group. But I was on their website the other day and thought I would just mention it, and maybe we can show the audience a little bit. It's all about.
Is it zapmedia.co?
No, Zap. I believe it's zapmedia.com. That's Z, or not Z, but XAPP media.com.
Oh, it's XA.
XAPP media.com.
Okay.
And what they're doing is voice recognition audio ads. So as you're listening to a podcast, they'll play an audio ad, like a ad insertion or an ad that's in a pre-roll position, and it will display a visual image, and it will be voice recognition. So you'll have the ability to answer it verbally. So if you're listening to it on a mobile device, I think they have Gallery. If you go off to the right on Gallery, I think it has a demo in there.
But who looks at their phone when they're listening?
No. Well, that's the point. This is audio ads that are voice activated. So you can respond to the ad verbally. The listener can, to take action. So if you go, I think you go to videos, go up to the top of the page, and then click on videos, and then click on what is. There you go. Play that video. Is it going to play? Well, you probably won't play any audio, but.
Yeah, I didn't. Hang on here. It's playing music.
Yeah, it's not coming through on our stream. So you're listening here, right, and there's an audio ad that starts to play, and then it gives you the option to respond to it. Either save the promo to, or email it to you or something like that. So
right,
as you're running like a host read, direct response advertiser promo code, you can respond to that promo code verbally.
Okay.
So it's an interesting kind of twist on trying to get the listener to be able to respond to an ad.
It may play the audio
directly.
Now.
What's that?
It may play the audio now. Let me see.
Okay. I mean, it's been one of the weak
No,
areas.
you don't hear it, do you?
No, I don't hear it yet. It's been one of the weaker areas in podcast advertising is the ability for the listener to respond in real time, right? Versus listening and then hearing a promo code and maybe having to go to a website to be able to take some action around a ad that maybe you want to get more information about, or you want to actually put into a queue that you can come back to later. It's always been one of those things. And I've always thought about this as like, while you're listening to a show, at least the app would display that promo code in let's say some sort of a memory store on the app or something like that you can go back to later and get access to that promo code. I mean, it's not unlike what you're doing with GoDaddy,
right?
Right, where you have a page on your website that lists all your promo codes. Well, this would be a way that you could voice response your action to an ad while the ad is playing, or just after it's over. So anyway, it's kind of a new way of looking at this advertising in audio, right? And I was interested in it and have been kind of exploring it a little bit. I don't know what you think of it. It's kind of hard to see. I mean, did you listen to the video?
Yeah, it just started. I'll have to go and listen to it later. Yeah, I'll have the link up in the show notes so the audience can as well, so they can go listen. But I think the challenge with any type of a tool like this is how unless you're in their app, how do you get it implemented, or if they're the app developers are, because this is never going to go into the podcast iOS app. So who's going to implement this? Because I'm sure they have an API.
Yeah.
So I don't, it works good maybe for. I don't know. I just think that's where the disconnect comes in. Is the the OEMs are not necessarily cooperating because they want to have them use their solution.
Yeah, I mean, I think as you're looking at the big picture of it, right? It's hard to get everybody on board with any particular technology that's kind of at the forefront of this space, right? I mean, Apple isn't necessarily doing a lot of changes to their podcasting capability around monetization, though. Who knows what they're going to do in the future? I mean, a lot of other companies are jumping into this space, and I mean, it's exciting to see some innovation being applied to audio and trying to think about these new models. And I mean, if we can get our return on investment for advertisers elevated, make it more convenient for the listener to get access to the offers, I think it could be a win-win. It's just how, like you say, how broadly is that capability going to be adopted? It's a little bit of the same challenge that you're going through with your Android plugin, right? It's trying to get all the app developers that are involved in this space to support it.
Yeah, we've got 6. 3 are online, but yeah, there's like 10 others.
Yeah.
Hey, Rob, someone said in the chat room that they heard audio, so let me try this again. Don't while it's going, don't say anything, and we'll see if it actually. And I'll watch it here. Let me try. And let me play. You probably won't hear it, but maybe the audience will.
Okay.
For your winter athletic needs, Run Right has you covered. To hear more about our current promotions, just say Zap Me.
Zap Me.
Car running right with a winter tune-up at Avon Auto Service. To schedule your service at a 15% discount, just say call now.
Call now.
Surprise that special someone with a dozen roses at 30% off. To have this offer emailed to you, just say send coupon.
Send coupon.
Get up to the minute scores and highlights for your favorite teams with the new Sportcast app. To download, simply say download app.
Download app.
Zap Media connects consumers with brands through interactive audio ads. Now, consumers can engage with your brand hands-free and eyes-free while listening to internet radio. Direct conversion by voice is changing the way people think about radio advertising. Learn more at zapmedia.com.
All right, I think it did go over. Looks like it went over fine, but that's kind of interesting how they. I agree. Kind of interesting how they did that. So it just plays it, and then the phone listens when they talk.
And I think if you think about where the direction of like things like the Amazon Echo and just kind of overall, Cortana and Siri and things like that. I mean, I can set up my phone to always be listening for some command that I want to give it to Cortana. I just have to train it to recognize my voice, and it will always be listening. And I guess part of what's happening overall in the technology space is that our phones and our devices are going to become more of smart agents, right? They're going to be able to interact with us and suggest things to us, and we can respond to them based on two-way communication, right? It's not just going to be the phone broadcasting to us. We're going to be able to voice prompt the device to respond to what we're listening to somehow or in some beneficial way. And I think that's part of the evolution of the technology that we're seeing happen around context, about the device knowing what we're doing, making suggestions to us. This is just an extension of that, right? We're listening to a voice ad. The device somehow knows that we're listening to that and offers the capability for you to respond to it verbally. And I think that technology is also going to come to just general podcast consumption too, where you get into the car and you say, I want to listen to the New Media Show, and it will automatically find it and start playing it. And you can say pause, you can say, please favorite this or put it in my recording basket or whatever, and then I can voice actively resume that playback at any time and not have to actually pull my phone out and have to fumble with it, launch the app, all this kind of stuff. I just see that kind of technology kind of becoming more ubiquitous. And obviously it isn't going to work in every environment, because oftentimes we're in noisy environments. We're on a bus or we're in a public restaurant or something like that, and to do a lot of voice activation in that environment probably isn't going to work very well. But I just think that there are a lot of places when we're going to be able to have a different kind of relationship with our devices. And you think about the Apple Watch, and that's always potentially could be listening for us to give it a command or can suggest things to us. So a new episode of the New Media Show comes out, it lets you know, or you can have some way to respond to that somehow. I don't know what you think about that, Todd. Why don't you give me your feedback? I'm a little long-winded here.
Yeah, I think I'm just like Josetta in the chat room, asking where would Zap be initiated from. So, the question then becomes, okay, they do an insert, but again, it goes back to what I was saying earlier. The app has to support it.
Yes,
it has to be baked into the app. So every app developer, in order to get the dollar impact that you would need, every app developer would have to implement it, and I think that's their big problem. I don't think they're going to get that.
Well, I think that's the challenge that has to be solved by the operating system smart agents, right? The Cortanas and the Siris. I think that this technology that you're seeing with Zap here is the beginning of something. It's not the end of something. I think that they could be acquired by Apple, or they could be acquired. And starts this kind of approach maybe gets built into the operating system as part of these smart agents technology. I agree. It's a little bit of a one-off to think that a small company, a standalone company, can get their technology into every platform. But it has to start somewhere.
Right. One thing that we had tried to do is put in place meta marks, and we've had that in our system now for 3-4 years.
Yeah.
And we've got the hooks and the API, but unless we got adoption by people putting this information in their players, that won't work. But it's very simple from a technology standpoint to actually to implement. And it just needs the the corresponding app developers and players to implement the meta marks, and then you got to get the content creators to mark stuff up. So that in itself is a challenge too, because many would never do that.
Well, we're trying to solve hard problems here, and ones that that the industry's had for 10 years and that hasn't been solved. I mean, we haven't seen a lot of innovation out of Apple pushing the envelope on this kind of stuff.
And I think too, the reason, like say for radio or for television, there, as big as those industries are, there are a limited number of players.
Yeah.
So for the radio business to implement something, if Clearwire comes in and says, okay, we're going to switch to this, them and their 1 jillion stations, or 15 stations in every market make the change as well, and it just goes in their head end of their technology, and it's easy to implement. The problem you have here, and with this media, is everyone is their own Clearwire, or not Clearwire,
Clear Channel.
Clear Channel, yeah. They're every content.
iHeart folks.
Yeah, every content creator is their own. Yeah, iHeart or Clear Channel or what, or NBC or CB. Exactly. Everyone's their own. So, and they're using a multitude of. I'm amazed. We're doing deep dives on data and seeing how people are, where they're putting their media. It just blows me away sometimes where I see media being linked to. People trying to get away with stuff to, for a better word, not pay for any hosting. It's I sometimes think, as really you're going to invest this time in doing this content, and then you're going to put your content here, and it just kind of shocks me. But if we have a hard time getting them to use a decent content delivery network, what's the chance of getting them to implement some of these other solutions? It's very, very difficult. Unless they're assigned with a network or something, and are forced to. Yeah.
No, it's true. Change in this space has been rather slow. I mean, it's not. I mean, I think the perception is that it's been, it's been changing dramatically, and it's, you know what I'm saying. But really, the more I think about it, the more it's kind of stayed the same.
Right.
I mean, a lot of the core principles that have existed in this space are not new, and I keep seeing the same experimentation happening over and over and over again, and it never catches on. But there's always somebody out there that didn't know the history and wants to try it. Do it all over again. And it didn't work last time, but it's the same thing with like what we've seen with Periscope and Meerkat. We've seen that phenomenon happen at South by before.
Yep.
And it exploded at South by because everybody's you got like 50,000 people all together in one place, and it's exciting, and people are going to parties, and there's just a lot of social interaction that kind of sparks a lot of use cases for live streaming video like that. And I think now you're kind of seeing, I've been monitoring both of these platforms, and I'm actually seeing, and I don't know if it's just my own experience, but Periscope is really kind of plateaued. It's not really, I don't see much really good content there, and there's not a lot of live streams. I mean, I'm not following 100,000 people or something like that there, but I see a lot more activity going on over Meerkat.
Well, frankly, Rob, most of us are pretty boring, and most of us live pretty boring lives. It's a Monday through Friday. You're at the 9 to 5. You go out to dinner with your wife, spouse, do the kids' thing at school or whatever, and the weekend you collapse and try to do stuff at home, and we're pretty, there's only a small percentage of people that are out there doing, jumping off cliffs and I think that is part of the challenge and the uptake in some of these platforms. And I'm sure they're getting great numbers, but when I see a lot of people working really hard to make really crappy content or share really crappy experiences.
Yeah.
So
no, it's definitely challenging, and you get just a bunch of new companies, like Art19. That's what I'm looking at right now. Art19.com. There's a lot of folks that are jumping into the space. Actually, I met with Sean Carr. I've talked to him before. He's the CEO of this company, and Matt.
So what do they do?
They're trying to build a podcast monetization platform. They've got a big team. They've been around for quite a while. So it's just another example of a company that's trying to find a path in this space, right? To build a business.
Right.
There's a lot of companies. There's another one called Jabberlabs.com is another one that's starting up.
What's it? It's Gabber Labs?
Jabber, GABBERLABS.com. Jabber Labs. No, J, not G.
Oh, we could end up on. Gotta be careful here with that loaded in.
Yeah.
End up with some content on there that.
Yeah, it's always dangerous, right?
Never heard of any of these folks.
Yeah, I just think that there's a lot of people that saw what happened with Serial.
Right.
And there's a lot of folks that just are seeing the space kind of explode in awareness and perception. And it does worry me a little bit. I mean, that all these companies are going to jump in, and there's just not room for everybody.
Here's another one, Enhancecast. They're another one.
Yeah.
And, they got they've got shows on there that I know they're not repping, and
they may not be repping. It just may be, I don't know, are they're trying to present themselves as a place for advertisers?
I don't know.
I do see a link to advertisers.
Right. So they're.
Does it say who's behind it?
Yeah, I know who's behind it.
Oh, you do?
Yeah. So, for example, this group, they don't have any measurement. So we're going to probably be providing them statistics. That's another thing. Is the next question is, all these groups coming in, they're, again, there's only so many big shows.
Yeah. Well, I think that's the real challenge in the space right now is content. I mean, that's part of the reason why I jumped into a content role now, is because I think that's the phase that we're in the podcasting space right now. It's not getting access to the content or finding it, or I think one of the big challenges is that as a show creator, how do you make sure that you get your show in all of the distribution platforms?
Right.
It's not as easy as it used to be.
Nope.
It's hard to know.
These guys, they got a huge team, and 10, 12 people.
Who's this? Which company?
The Art19 folks.
Yeah.
So are they got venture? Is that what they're?
I don't believe so. I think he got some seed funding, but I think Sean is self-funded on this thing. So I'm not seeing a lot of venture investment in the podcasting space.
So
I did see that the Zap folks got $3.8 million investment, but I'm just seeing like maybe 1 to 3 or 4 million is about the maximum that I see in seed or VC investment in this space.
So when you talk to the Art19 folks, do they understand the challenges that face them?
Yeah, actually, Sean does. I mean, he actually has been trying to start this company for a couple of years now.
Wow.
And hasn't been able to get traction with his concept and his idea, and it's been kind of a challenge. But And I think it's fairly indicative of a lot of new companies that get into the space. It's not as easy of a path as I think they would like it to be.
Right.
And it's not as easy to get funding either, because I think a lot of VCs are skeptical of it, mainly for the experience that a lot of the VC community had with Stitcher. I hate to say it, but there was some losses that were experienced in the Stitcher deal. So
yeah.
that kind of put a little bit of a damper on the VC community being excited about the on-demand audio space. Now, I shouldn't make a blanket statement that there isn't some interest there, but I just think that it's until there's, I think, more revenue in this side. I think most of the investment that's coming is from the on-demand radio kind of broadcast side that are investing in the on-demand audio side, not necessarily from a VC, but kind of an internal investment in building out technologies to support this space. So it's not coming from the big VCs. There's some seed investment going on, but I'm not seeing any activity. I mean, a lot of the VC community is looking for what they call the unicorn, which are the really big plays, like the Ubers and the new companies that could turn into multi-billion-dollar companies. I think that there's a general perception that there aren't going to be any companies in the podcast space that are going to wind up being multi-billion-dollar companies.
Right.
So.
Well, and I think they're just, I wish these companies luck. I know the road that they have to climb. And, I think they are going to be sadly shaken when they figure out there's not as much inventory as they think there is.
Yeah, that or there just isn't if you think about how many ad buyers there are out there for this space, it's a fairly small pool.
Yeah.
And a lot of the big players in this space have pretty tight relationships with those folks already.
Yep.
And it's going to be hard for 100 new people to break in and get into these ad deals.
Yep.
So I think that's another challenge that the space has. I mean, you really have to be an established player, I think, somewhat to get the opportunity, and it's hard, as you know.
Well, and I also, a lot of us have spent a lot of money flying all over the country talking to these people too. So,
yeah,
it's they're going to have to do that legwork. They're going to have to get in those offices and get those meetings and make their value added pitch. And then those media buyers have been buying for a while, and they're going to be asking, what makes you different than company A, B, C? Yep. And why are you going to deliver me better results? And so time will tell on these. But
I've often thought that the app companies could be a good candidate for getting involved in buying podcast ads. Especially the successful ones. Like the successful gaming app companies. But I haven't seen a lot of that. Have you seen much of that?
Nope.
No.
And and gaming is one of those categories that the gaming folks don't like to spend a lot of money. They like to get product. They have such hyper fans, they don't have to spend too much money on actual advertising.
Yeah, because they create their software to be viral,
right?
And spread through sharing of bonus points or working in the search engines or working with the app stores. Yeah.
It's definitely a fun time in the space. I'll say that. It's things are on the move, and it's and another thing too is these companies they're going to have to start breaking into the relationship business too, because if they don't get relationships with the content creators, they're going to have a tough time welcoming them over, because the podcasters are very skeptical companies and very wary based on history. So,
yeah, there's been a lot of companies that have kind of burned the community, and in turns, the community has burned those companies.
yeah, they have burned them to the ground. In fact,
yeah. So you have to be very careful of that. It's not and I think that's probably the number one danger that new companies coming into the space face is not knowing the history.
Right.
I know you and I try and work with them the best I can. I can think of a handful of companies that I've talked to over the last couple of years that have been new to the space, and I tried to reach out and contact the CEOs of these companies and talk to them and say, if you got questions about this stuff, shoot me an email. I'll give you the background on that kind of a practice or whatever if you have any questions. So,
right.
And that still exists today. I mean, I want all these new companies to be successful.
And also, there's a tendency too, by a certain segment of the podcasting community, if it's new and shiny, it has to be better. And they run at it, and oftentimes, what I will see is a few months later they'll be back. It's had one gentleman that went over to another group to do advertising with, and I said, we'll be here if you need to, when you come back. And I actually gave him some advice when he left. I said, have an opt out. If they're gonna make you sign a contract, get guarantees. If anyone in the podcasting space says, I want you to sign a 2-year commitment or something to that effect, that better come with, in my opinion, it should come with a cash guarantee, a monthly cash guarantee minimum. And then I said, opt out for a specific advertiser, have the ability to say, no, this doesn't work. And then the ability to do a 30, 60, or 90-day get out of jail card, and be able to terminate a relationship.
Yep.
But I think a lot of times folks will get overzealous and they'll overlook some of those fine points in a contract, and the next thing you know, they're locked in for 2 years, and they're emailing you on a weekly basis, mad, because they're not getting the revenue they were expecting. So,
and I think, I mean, in the bigger picture of things, it's not good for even a network to lock in shows either, because
no.
I mean, it's a two-sided relationship. It has to work for both sides. I saw that clearly at Podcast One, and just my experience in this space is that it's got to be a win-win for both sides. Also, it's just not worth doing. And it's not necessarily bad that there's turnover in a network or something like that of shows. There's new shows coming in and old shows moving on. I mean, it's just part of it. Some shows make it. Some shows are a fit in a network. Some shows aren't. So having those more of an open door policy in the contract, I think, is a beneficial one for the network and the content provider.
Yeah, it just, anytime someone says contract to me, I get weirded out. I'm looking at potentially adding a couple of shows to Geek News Central. Haven't made the announcement yet, but I guess I'll just say here I'm having at least one show leave, and or just not necessarily leave, but they're going to go on their own. And I'm doing a little bit of mix-up. You have to do that from time to time.
Yep.
And, there's a couple of the folks that I'm talking to, I'm just like, listen, I'm not saying it's going to be a gentleman's agreement, but we're going to have a little bit of it's going to be a piece of paper, what the expectations are, what the out clauses are, what the timeline is, and, and some of the stuff I just talked about, Rob, is, in my own business dealings, that's how I walk the walk and talk the talk. I live by my own recommendations. Now,
you still have to have structure.
There's structure
in deals like this, because if you get into a dispute, there needs to be a way to work through it.
Yep.
There just needs to be an understanding. But I think what we're talking about is lock-in. Right?
Yeah, lock-in.
And trying to hold a piece of content or a content provider hostage in your contract.
And when it happens, hostilities break out.
Yeah,
exactly. It's not good.
And then it leads to burning of bridges and people having bad feelings, and then when they leave your network, they talk badly about your network, and there's just a lot of downsides to holding anybody hostage. Right? Yep. You can go to jail for holding people hostage. So.
Boy, I tell you that if we could have sent some people to jail for holding some podcasts hostage in the early days, some companies would have been.
But I guess it's okay in contract law. It's just not okay in
real life. Right. Well, I was watching the space this week. Relatively quiet on the discussion front, but I am seeing one thing that's starting to. Ever since Google announced that they were going to rank website pages higher that had a HTTPS, and just for the podcasters listening, I give you a little word of caution in implementing HTTPS. Don't issue your own certificate. Buy a real SSL certificate that you go through the process with from a reputable vendor. And it's usually your domain providers usually can sell you an SSL certificate. Make sure that you have that implemented by someone that knows what they're doing. Yeah. Because if you do not, iTunes has no problem pulling an HTTPS, but they do have issues if you don't have a valid certificate. So you have to make sure you have a valid certificate and that it's implemented correctly. Now, you also have to redirect your old HTTP feed if you've made this switch to HTTPS. Now, my recommendation is that you do not force the people to, when they come to the website, to be on the HTTPS feed. Some folks are doing it site-wide. They're just flipping the switch, and when they come in, they're forcing them into HTTPS, and that can cause some problems. So you have to follow. It's just like having a new feed address. You have to use the same rules that apply for moving a feed, but be very, very careful and make sure you implement the SSL certificate correctly.
Plus, you have to pay for that SSL certificate on a yearly basis. It's kind of like owning a domain name. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've had to deploy those on e-commerce sites before, and it's installed in the server,
right,
at the server end. So it's part of the operating system of the server that actually manages that communication between the browser and the actual server, and it's just basically a string of characters. It's basically an unlock code that both sides have the ability to read to encrypt that transmission between the server and the client, or the server and the browser.
But we've helped a couple of people this past week that I guess for a better word implemented it incorrectly, and they're screaming, "Why is my stuff on iTunes anymore? Or why is it not updating?" Mm-hmm. And that is the case. Also, another thing that I saw earlier this week was I saw someone putting their entire transcript of each show in their body of their blog post. So the individual's feed that I looked at had 30,000 lines of RSS, and while
that's not good.
No, and it was huge. I mean, a monster feed. I'm all about making sure that you have your control of your own feed, but let's not use that practice. And if you are, you can only have like 5 episodes.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, because I mean, the iTunes platform has a limitation on how much data they will ingest from you,
and a time limit on how long it takes a feed to load too. So if you have this huge feed, and you are you don't not careful, it could time out, and it's usually because the feeds are way, 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 way too big. Now, if you are using PowerPress, you can use the feed maximizer function and get a lot more mileage out of your feed. The first, like you said, it's like the first 10 episodes have all of the metadata, and then the episodes beyond that do not. So, Rob, hang on a second. Go ahead and I got to yell at my wife for a second about something, and I'll let you chat.
I mean, keep in mind that Apple actually will store all of that or cache all that metadata from your feed. It's not going to store or cache your episodes, but it's going to store all of the metadata from your feed in their platform. So it's just a thing to keep in mind. They do have a limit on how much data they're willing to store, and that they will actually truncate your feed if you go over that file size limit. The other thing that I heard that also could have an impact on podcasters too is the priority treatment that Google is giving to websites that are now mobile friendly or have designs that are mobile responsive sites now. So they're giving priority to sites that are more easily accessed or used in mobile devices.
That actually worked to my advantage on a couple of things. And some search terms that I had that I wasn't tracking real well in the top 10, all of a sudden now I'm like 5 and 6 because the sites that were tracking above me were not mobile friendly.
Yep.
So yeah, I had to. I knew the trash can hadn't been taken out yet, and the garbage guy came early.
Life comes in, and
I had to yell out.
Involved
you see, did someone put that out? And my wife did. So I'm probably going to get the evil eye when I get done here because I'm normally responsible for that. So yeah, it's and it's just little things now that we're seeing, and a lot of folks are really not doing the homework that they need to kind of be up to speed on what they should be doing for their shows and for their branding, and some of these just same mistakes made over and over and over and over again, and it's just a cycle of the podcasting space.
Yeah, it is. I mean, I wonder what the next big thing is, though. I mean, I'm always kind of wondering. We're kind of in this lull, right? Where there hasn't been any big breakout content either. That's come out. I mean, what is that next big thing for podcasting? I don't know. Is it just going to be an evolutionary thing? I worry that the kind of, I hate to use the word hype, but the increased awareness is going to taper off. I mean, I still keep seeing the regular flow of articles online that still talk about serial and public radio is where all of the buzz is in the space right now.
But they're not creating nothing new.
Yeah, that's true. Right. I did see that Mr. Bill Simmons from who's been doing a lot of sports podcasting has decided. I think he's going to leave the ESPN folks, so he may be going out on his own.
Well, they had quite the dust up with him, didn't they? So
yeah, and who knows? He may wind up landing at a place like DirecTV or something like that. Would be my guess. That's the place that took on a Rich Eisen, and they're building quite a sports brand over there with DirecTV on the podcasting side. And what other stuff is going on in the space?
Well, I thought I would demo our one-click subscribe on Android if you want me to show that.
Okay.
So for those of you that are watching, I've got the New Media Show's website up. You'll see now on the right-hand column, and for those of you that are PowerPress users, you can use the subscribe to podcast widget that's available for you in the widget area when you're using PowerPress, or you can create your own icon. But let me show you what happens here. So just like on iTunes now, when someone comes in, and let's just imagine those of you that are listening that you're on, and just come over to newmediashow.com with your browser, Safari or Chrome or whatever you got, and when you click on the on Android button, what's going to happen is that if the content creator doesn't have a Android one-click supported app, it's going to take you to the Subscribe on Android website. It's going to list the apps that are available that are one-click capable, so you can get the app, and then right from there you can still subscribe to the show, because we don't take them off this page when they do that. But from then on out, once they've loaded a one-click app that's available, one of the one-click apps, again, we've got at least 3 more that we know are coming. What'll happen then is when they're back on your website or another podcaster's website, and they see the on Android button, now that they've got a one-click app, once they click this again with the app loaded, the app will load and present them a subscribe to podcast button. So it's truly one click after they load the one-click button. Now, going back over to the subscribeonandroid.com website, and see if I can do this without too much downtime here. If you do not use PowerPress and you want to have a widget, or basically an embed code, you put your feed in, you hit you do a submit, and then we provide you an embed code at the bottom of the page that basically will allow you to cut and paste, and you can use any graphic you want. We came up with a little subscribe on Android icon, but you can use whatever icon you want. You can put that together. But that's how it works. And what we've got, Rob, going on is a number of the content, or a lot of the app developers on Android, their release schedule is not as often as what we see in iOS. The update rate on iOS is much higher. So I think we'll see this adoption take place over a couple of months. But the goal is to get, and if you got an app that is not one-click supported, and you've been promoting it on your website, you need to talk to those app developers.
Hey, Todd, I also wanted to mention here,
Sure.
The Overcast app now works with the Apple Watch.
Yeah,
I don't know
saw
if you
that.
wanted to go to marco.org, and we can display it on the screen here, what Marco Armament is doing with his Overcast app on the Apple Watch. So I don't know if you want to pull that up.
I'll bring that up. So this is what it looks like.
Yep.
Well, that's good. It took him 2 or 3 iterations, I heard. The first version he wasn't happy with, and he had to rewrite it, and now he's got something that he likes. So, I don't see. I'm watching people's wrist, and the only people that I see with an Apple Watch these days are the super geeks. I'm not seeing a lot of people wearing it.
It's an expensive watch, and truth be told is a lot of people don't wear watches anymore.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think Apple's gonna make a couple $2 billion on this, and they'll be happy with that. I don't think it's going to be. I mean, it may over time. Who knows? It's hard to say how popular this wearable technology is going to be.
Yeah. Now, hey, Rob.
I haven't heard. Does the Apple Podcast app, does that work on the watch?
I don't know. That's a good question.
I haven't heard anything. Or is this, is Marco leading the way here?
Potentially. I'm not, to be honest with you, I don't know.
Yeah, I haven't heard anybody talk about the Apple Podcast app.
Anyone have an Apple Watch that's listening, and does the iOS app work? That'd be a good question.
I know I'll have to go to the Apple Store and play around with one.
Yeah. Hey, Josetta asked in the chat room, or what she says is, what I notice is the next thing in podcasting is video podcasts. Please comment.
Well, I guess it depends on how you define what a video podcast is, right?
Well, go ahead and expand, Rob.
Well, I think this show's a good example, right? You can do, and you start thinking about Periscope, and you start thinking about, how easy it is to do video online. I think that there's going to be podcasters that do a lot of video. I think that's inevitable. It's been going on for a long time. There's really nothing new about it. The question is, how is it distributed?
Right.
And I think it's not going to be distributed probably likely in any kind of huge way in an RSS feed. It's just too costly, too expensive. Though, you can host a video podcast on Libsyn or Blueberry or wherever you want to host it, right? But it's as I think Rob Walsh said it here recently on his Feed podcast that he does, that he's seen a dramatic drop-off in video podcasting, just in general. If he looks at the Libsyn, hosting platform and what's going on there, and I saw it, working on Zune and all that stuff. I saw it, just over the last 10 years, it just has been a steady fall off. And I think at one point it was like a third of my catalog was video podcasts back in the day. But now I think Rob said it was probably like less than 10% of his hosting platform. I don't know what it is for you, Todd, but
he's probably happy that it is.
Yeah.
He's probably happy that it is only 10%.
Because it's a bandwidth hog.
It's expensive, and depending on how much you're paying for bandwidth, you could be, this show here will be just north of a gig in size when we get it done for an hour and 30 minutes. And, it could be if you don't have any volume pricing whatsoever with a CDN and you're trying to do it yourself, you could pay 12 cents for that delivery for one episode, to one listener. Whereas if you have volume, you might pay half a penny or a penny or two to deliver to the video to a single content creator. Whereas on the audio side, you can probably, on most instances, probably deliver 20 to 20 listeners for the same cost. Yeah. So it's probably 20 to 25 times more expensive to deliver video than it does audio, just because it's so big.
Yeah. And it's true that the cost of bandwidth is coming down,
right?
But it is still a scale model. I mean, it's really the reason why Google is able to do as much video as they're doing on YouTube is because they're at such a huge scale that the cost of the infrastructure, and Google's trying to build out their own peer-to-peer, kind of fiber infrastructure right now to cut back on that cost as much as they can.
They bought, when the economy was in the crapper, they bought up a huge, vast swaths of dark fiber.
And there still is a lot of dark fiber out there.
Yeah.
So, I think that's the game. I mean, you look at Google and Microsoft and Facebook and all these guys that are using just vast quantities of bandwidth. They're getting bandwidth. I would think they're getting bandwidth for a fraction of a penny.
I would think so.
That's how cheap it is for them. And even that's forcing them into building their own infrastructure and their own network. And I think that, a lot of those guys already have an extensive network that they've built already. It's just, they just keep pushing the envelope on expanding it and growing its capacity and building these huge data centers out in areas that are out in the middle of nowhere that have a lot of sunshine, that they can tap into solar panels, and they can get, hydroelectric power. It's really cheap power. And just get access, just keep driving their costs down. And I think, in the long run, that's going to help all of us.
And price breaks happen at very increasing tiers. So, example, the price that when we first started doing hosting, the price that we would pay compared to what we pay now is dramatically different because I've gotten to the tier levels that I need to drive the cost down. It's basically a volume play.
Yeah.
And we basically, on a yearly basis, sign a contract that we're going to move X number of terabytes per month. If we don't move them, we pay for them. It doesn't matter. It's like, and we've actually found a couple of times where I wasn't quite at the next tier, but I signed the contract at the higher tier level anyway, knowing that we were going to get there, and because it lowered the price enough that I was able to make up the difference. Even though I wasn't moving all of that. And, so we're talking hundreds of terabytes, thousands of terabytes of data. And when you get into those types of scales, that's where you're having the, our CDN bills us automatically, and it's tied to a credit card.
Yeah,
and
that bill's coming either way.
Well, right? we have them hit that credit card every week, and then we just have an auto payment, that goes to that credit card. And at some point, they'll have to start sending us a paper bill because it'll be beyond the bounds of the limit on the credit card.
Yeah, and what you pay for bandwidth on a per gigabyte basis, I know, there's players in the podcasting space that will charge you bandwidth.
Right.
Working at Podcast One, Podcast One charged Adam Carolla for his bandwidth, and so I had to do all the breakouts on all that stuff. And it's usually a few pennies a gigabyte or something, and that's just how the stuff is priced out, and it's going to, like you said, it's a total volume play, and most podcasters don't have to be concerned about this stuff.
Right.
But if you get into building your own network, or you're getting into building a distribution platform that is supporting a lot of shows, it becomes a big factor, especially when you have a limited number of shows. I mean, even Podcast One, when I was working there, it's not like the company had a huge amount of shows, and they had like 20, 25 original programs and that they had on the platform, and maybe a total of a couple hundred shows that they hosted. But the bandwidth bill was pretty big. I mean, it was a lot of those were shows that were getting a fair amount of traffic. So and the website did pretty well too. So I was starting to negotiate with the CDNs and trying to get better pricing. So,
well, Rob, for us, it's our bandwidth bill is bigger than our payroll bill.
Yeah.
So, for us, it's when you're paying more money to move bandwidth than you are writing payroll, it's a significant number.
Yeah, or is it a factor, Todd, that you've managed to keep your payroll numbers down?
No, not at all. And we just added another person to the payroll this week, and it's not that at all. It's just the bandwidth is not inexpensive.
Yeah.
And
and there's a direct correlation between success and your bandwidth numbers too, I think.
Well, I hope so. Jeanette says SoundCloud is now implementing podcasts. Well, they've had podcasts in beta for 3 years now, out of beta. So
yeah.
It's the shiny new toy. I've been watching to see what our burn rate was going to be for number of lost customers, and so far not seeing a mass exodus, which makes you breathe a sigh of relief. And watching intake numbers too to see where that is. That's yet to be told if we're going to see a downward trend in the number of new customers. But I think once people realize that SoundCloud is doing this for SoundCloud and not necessarily for anyone else, there may not be as big a land rush.
Yeah, I don't know what the reaction was. I think a lot of, and I was concerned about a little bit too, that people were going to see this as a shiny object, but really it's it's been accessible to podcasters for a long time now.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, I'm not sure them opening it up was as big of a deal as. I mean, any podcaster could have applied to be on their program, and I think they've put out numbers that they've got like 15,000 shows or something like that are currently podcasting.
But if and a lot of content creators get wrapped around their player, they like that shiny player, but the content's not being consumed on websites. It's largely moved to mobile. So, but it's a shiny object, and
yeah, and I guess the other thing is too is that I wonder if the web is going to come back as you start thinking about these integrated operating systems and how it's just going to be all about getting access to the data, and the smart agents are going to funnel us to the app resources that we need at that moment. I just wonder if we're coming into a time where the web and apps are going to merge together more. I'm not sure what that looks like yet, but I think the smart agent technology is going to tend to do that. I know that the Windows folks, announced that they were going to enable the ability for the operating system to dynamically generate a app experience, a client app experience for a website in Windows. So you could launch a website almost like you would launch a web app almost, but it could be dynamically generated into a client experience, which I thought was really interesting. When you think about how websites are getting more connected to the core functions of our mobile devices, our sensors and our cameras and our speaking abilities and things like that. So you have this kind of integration that's happening on the browser side that could over time make all content basically run like an app, whether it comes from the web or it comes from a native app. The experience over time could be the same.
Well, don't you think that's part of Microsoft's goal to catch up or try to catch up?
No, I think it is too, but I think also it's not necessarily a bad trend line. Right. I would say that having content that lives on the web, which is a different delivery protocol than apps, somewhat. There's a little crossover there, but having those worlds kind of combine on each other, I think, is a good thing. And I think it simplifies the overall, kind of, because we're both living in this kind of like two-headed world, right? We're living in apps and we're living in websites.
Right.
Why don't we just live in one world that integrates all that stuff?
Well, and I have on my desktop, let's see if I can show you without showing secrets. I use Slack quite a bit. And,
yeah, I do too. I use Slack too.
And this Slack has their own app.
Yep.
For the desktop.
Yep.
And so we're this runs continuously now on my phone. It's just like a regular app. The experience on a website is not that great. It's actually better in the app. But
it's not that much different, though. I mean, I use both. They're very similar. So I think we're at this part of what I'm saying is that we're at this point of potential inflection, right? Where there isn't a big distinction anymore between things that are run in a browser and things that are run in a client app, right?
Right.
That's the bigger kind of message that I'm trying to say, is that the capabilities of a browser are kind of moving to the next level.
So the question, though, really becomes, too, on the Microsoft side, is they are trying to, they're going to give people the ability to encode, the current Android apps into Windows apps. And, the question is that just going to be a kludge, or is that going to, they have to be real careful here, because if they're going to do this, it has to just work. It has to be the same experience that they experience on an Android device, or an
Todd,
iPhone.
are we asking the right question here, though? The question gets back to is from a competitive perspective.
Well, from a
is iOS, is Apple and Google gonna let Microsoft do this?
I don't think they have a choice, because they're going to build this into Microsoft development tools, and there's going to be a parser. There's going to be something that sits in between. So you're going to have a mobile phone that's a Windows phone, let's say. You're going to have some sort of an emulator, some sort of piece of software that will interpret. It basically lets that app run on top of that operating system. If that works, if they can make that really work, and it's the same experience, it's not slow, it's not kludgy, they'll probably do okay. And it also make it easier for the app developers to, if they can convert their app in a day or two, they might do that. But if it's going to take 3 weeks of dev to convert for Windows Phone, it's not going to happen.
Well, and I think, one of the things that I was thinking about is that, one thing that they developed for Xbox that was really kind of interesting is these virtual environments that they create, where they can create an environment or a version of the operating system that is compatible with older code, right? It creates this instance that is capable of running a certain kind of code base. I kind of wonder if that's what we're talking about here, is kind of this, they're going to build into the operating system the code base that will allow an app to run in a kind of like a virtual operating system environment. I'm drawing a blank on the actual technical term that they actually describe this right now, but it's almost like an instance that runs on top of the operating system.
It is. It's that layer. It's what I said. It's that basically that emulator or whatever it's going to be, or virtual instance.
And that actually has all the hooks in it, all the APIs that will make it translate. It's like a translator layer, right? Yeah. That translates from one code base to another code base. That will make it work. It's all about kind of hardware performance too.
Yeah. The sun isn't on my forehead, but it's on the mic. The sunlight has found a hole to get through.
Todd, it's like a whack-a-mole.
Yeah, and I've got the situation solved in here. But what it is, it's that little gap that's on those shades.
Yeah, that's all it takes.
It's that little gap. So it's funny. Josette saw it, and she mentioned in the chat room. Hey, Rob, we are already here at the hour and a half mark. So
I know. We did the whole show ourselves.
Absolutely.
Amazing, huh?
Yeah, we got, and I don't know if you can hear it in the background when I'm talking, but we got all kinds of activity going on. I don't know if there's a dump truck delivering rocks or something, but it sure was.
I can't hear anything. So your mic is, both these mics, I think, are very, they're dynamic mics, so they only pick up what's right around them. But yeah. So anyway, well, I don't have a guest to announce for next week.
Okay.
I'm not sure what happened to our guest, but
his loss, not ours.
That's right. we were able to talk about things that we wanted to talk about, not have to listen to someone else. Right.
That's right. Hey, for the audience, thanks for being here. Sorry our guest didn't show up, but that happens once in a while. If you've got comments on today's show, we want you to email us. It's either Todd or Rob at newmediashow.com. So Todd at newmediashow.com, Rob at newmediashow.com. Of course, you can reach me on Twitter at Geek News is my hangout.
I'm at Rob Greenlee, and that's 2 E's on the end.
So we do have a Twitter account for the New Media Show, and like a knucklehead, I'm like, why haven't I been promoting that?
NMS Podcasts? I think
I couldn't get the exact one that I wanted, but it's NMS Podcast, so it's at NMS Podcast. So follow us there on Twitter as well. And lots of stuff happening in space, so I'm sure we'll have lots to talk about next week as well. But I want to thank everyone for coming out and hanging out with us this Saturday morning. And by the way, I saw Leo and his screen. Is it Screensavers? The new
Screensavers, yeah.
Did you
the
watch
new Screensavers?
Yeah, did you watch their first episode?
I haven't watched it yet, but I've been wanting to. I just haven't got to it yet.
Yeah, I spent kind of got caught up here yesterday, and I'll watch it. They did a nice job.
No, I think I did watch a few minutes of it. I think it was when he was talking to Kevin Rose.
Yeah, Kevin was on the whole show.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I think I did see the first 10 or 15 minutes of that.
Talk about a guy that has really done well. My God, that man.
Yeah. Well, Kevin's got his fingers in a lot of different things.
Yeah. And he's had a couple of successful company buyouts, so he's done very, very, very well.
Yeah, well, he was one of the original founders of Revision 3.
Yep.
So I was just on a call with Mr. Jim Lauterbach just the other day. We were talking about stuff. He's now working on a project down in L.A. He's the former CEO of Revision 3. He's doing a lot of the conference kind of planning for VidCon.
Oh.
Down in L.A. So
he's got his hands in a lot of things. I see him doing interviews all over the place.
Yeah, and he's heavily involved in the online video space, which actually Damon, who was going to be our guest today, used to work for Jim.
Oh.
So at Revision 3. So anyway.
All right, cool. All right, everyone. We'll see you the next go around. Thanks for being here, and everyone have a great week. It's gonna start getting nuts around here because it's graduation time, and but the show will go on. So everyone, thanks for being here. We'll see you next time. Everyone, take care.
Okay, thank you.
Aloha. You on YouTube. See you later, YouTube.